least one of the assumptions of Pearson is not met. At least one of the assumptions that I have mentioned. So what are you going to do? Okay. So you can use any of our non-parametric measures of association. Again, depende pa rin sa characteristic of our data. Okay. So kanina, I already mentioned some of the coefficients under the ordinal and nominal. Okay. And some other coefficients that you can use are the following. Kasi as I've said earlier, marami, no? There are so many techniques that can be used depending on the variables that you are correlating. In fact, yung ilan nga dito, hindi ko pa nga yan masyado nagagamit. Ano? Okay, so we have the point by serial. For your guidance, so ito yung mga characteristics ng ating variables. So the point by serial is used if X is dichotomous. So what do you mean by dichotomous? So the values are either 0 or 1 without natural ordering, and the Y is quantitative. Okay. You can also use the biserial correlation. So this is for the variables. If your X has been dichotomized with natural ordering. Okay. So ibig sabihin, may purpose yung assignment natin ng which will be 0 and which will be 1, or which will be 1 or which will be 2. And Y is definitely quantitative. Okay. We also have this what we call the tetrachoric correlation coefficient when both of the variables have been dichotomized. This one, the eta coefficient, I usually use this one. Ano? So I use eta coefficient if the X is qualitative and the Y is at least interval. So yung X mo quali, pero yung Y mo quanti. So instead na, usually kasi yung ginagawa ng ibang researchers, if one of the variables is the one is quali and the other one is quanti, what they do, they convert the quantitative variable into qualitative variable so that they can use the chi-square. So ganun yung ginagawa nila. But actually, instead of doing that, we have this what we call the eta coefficient. Okay? So let me give you another example para lang ma-feel natin, no, yung application ng mga techniques. A researcher wants to determine if the monthly income of employees is positively associated with their highest grade completed. Okay? Again, 15 employees were randomly selected and the data were subjected to statistical analysis. So as you can see, dito sa aking box, I used the Spearman. Bakit ko ginamit ang Spearman? Okay, so tingnan natin. One variable is income. Income is quantitative variable. So that is ratio. The other variable is the highest grade completed. Okay, so the highest grade completed is qualitative variable, but in the ordinal level. If at least one of your variable is ordinal, pag meron kang ordinal and you have very small sample size, you cannot use Pearson even if one of the variables is quantitative. Okay? So, kasi ang requirement kasi ng Pearson, both of them must be quantitative variables and no outliers. So in this case, in this example, one of our variable is qualitative in the ordinal level. So the most appropriate measure to determine the degree of association is the Spearman. So I use here the Spearman and the generated coefficient is 0.886 or 0.89. So looking at our table of interpretation, magpo-fall po siya dun sa very strong association. And because I'm not using here the Pearson, hindi ko ginagamit yung term na linear association. So to interpret our computed value, so we can say that there is a very strong positive association between monthly income and the highest grade completed of employees. So meaning, as the highest grade, as the educational attainment gets better or increases, then the monthly income is also expected to increase. All right. So that figure or that interpretation at that point or at this point in time is true only for the 15 employees. So we would like to assess if these 15 employees will represent all the employees in that particular company. Okay, so again, we need to perform our hypothesis testing wherein we can get our p-value using our Spearman. So the generated p-value is actually very small. It is less than 0.001. So that is highly significant. Okay, so at 5% level of significance, there is sufficient evidence to indicate that the monthly income and the highest grade completed of employees are associated. Okay. Now, to have demand for the qualitative or categorical variable, let me give you this example. So a simple random sample of 1,709 graduates was classified according to sex, male and female, and whether they participated in the labor force or not. Okay? So I have here a 2x2 a 2x2 contingency table. So is there evidence to suggest a significant association between these two variables? Okay? So, for the case of the chi-square, by the way, bakit chi-square ang gagamitin ko? So, let us analyze the variables. Both of the variables are categorical. So, one is sex. So, wherein you have male and female as the possible categories. And the other variable is the participation in the labor force, wherein we also have two categories. Okay? Participated and did not participate. Okay? So both of the variables are categorical, so the appropriate measure of association is any coefficients that are chi-square base. Okay? Now, for the chi-square base, meron po tayong rule of thumb na ina-adapt, so which is entirely different dun sa ating Spearman and Pearson. By the way, yung Spearman also use the table of interpretation of Pearson. So for the case of chi-square, this is the cutoff that we use. If the coefficient is less than 0.10, we declare that there is a weak association between the two categorical variables. If the coefficient is between 0.10 to 0.3, that means there is a moderate association. And if it is greater than 0.3, that means there is a strong association. All right. And also, there is no pattern. There is no positive or negative in interpreting the association for the nominal variables. Okay. Kasi ano naman te, because ang data kasi natin dito ay count data. Okay, frequency yung data natin dito. Hindi siya measured data. Okay? So, pag count data, the minimum value is 0. So, occurrence kasi yung tinitingnan natin. Okay? So, sorry po dun sa aking label, dun sa technique. I use here the chi-square. Hindi po Spearman. So, the estimated coefficient is 0.053. So, if you're going to refer to our table of interpretation, magpo-fall po siya dun sa weak association. So, that means, based on our data collected, there is a weak association between the monthly income. I'm sorry for the, okay, na-copy-paste ko po, no? So, there is a weak association between sex and whether the graduate participated in the labor force or not. Okay? So the p-value generated here is 0.0272 based on the chi-square. So that means we can conclude at 5% level of significance that there is sufficient evidence to indicate that participation in the labor force is indeed associated with sex. So if you notice po, nakita natin doon sa coefficient, weak yung association. But because we have a very large sample size kasi, so there is a tendency po talaga, so hindi po to unusual na makakuha tayo ng significant na result. So usually kasi sa mga small sample size, kapag weak yung nakuha mong association, indicator na agad yan that the relationship is not significant. Okay? So as you can see kanina dun sa example natin, in fact we had moderate association, but our samples cannot support the idea that there is a linear relationship between those two variables. Okay?